The Jagdpanzer IV was a German tank destroyer that saw action in the Second World War. It was developed by utilizing the chassis of the Panzer IV tank and was specifically designed to provide mobile and heavily armed support to German infantry and tank units. Initially, the plan was to equip the Jagdpanzer IV with the long 7.5cm L70 gun, but due to limited availability, the shorter L48 gun was used as a temporary solution. However, in early 1944, production of the long gun increased, allowing for the introduction of a modified version of the Jagdpanzer IV known as the Panzer IV 70V. Throughout the war, fewer than 2,000 of these vehicle types were produced. The development of the Jagdpanzer IV, initially known as the Sturmgeschütz Neue Art, was initiated in September 1942 following a request from the Waffenamt. The goal was to create a new type of assault gun armed with the 7.5cm KWK L70 and featuring enhanced protection with 100mm of frontal armor. Alket, the primary manufacturer of the Stug III, undertook the task of finding a solution to mount the 7.5cm L70 on the Stug III. By late 1942, a wooden mock-up was completed. However, it became apparent that the Stug III chassis was unable to accommodate the new gun. As a result, a new vehicle based on the Panzer IV was developed. Due to the limited availability of the long 75mm guns, the decision was made to use the existing L48 guns that were already employed on various German vehicles. In October 1942, Wehrmacht presented its own version of the vehicle to Adolf Hitler, based on the Panzer IV. Impressed by the proposal, Hitler approved the project, and by May 1943 a wooden mock-up was completed. This initial mock-up was based on an unmodified Panzer IV Ausf F tank chassis. After its presentation, Hitler expressed satisfaction and ordered the production of the first prototypes as soon as possible. In September 1943, Wehrmacht began assembling two soft steel Zero Series vehicles, which closely resembled the wooden mock-up with rounded front corners and firing ports on the superstructure sides. However, these features were later dropped in favor of a simpler armored design for the production vehicles. Despite receiving various designations throughout its service, the vehicle would become best known as the Jagdpanzer IV. Despite the invested time and resources, both Heinz Guderian, responsible for rebuilding the Panzer Force, and Albert Speer, Minister of Armaments and War Production, did not express enthusiasm for the Jagdpanzer IV, even after the design was simplified. Guderian, focused on rationalization and immediate production, may have overlooked the potential benefits of the Jagdpanzer IV as a valuable firepower addition to the Panzer Force. However, it is essential to consider that their decisions were likely driven by strategic considerations and resource prioritization. The production of the Panzer IV held critical importance for the German war effort, and any delays or diversions could have had significant consequences for the outcome of the war. Based on favorable field reports regarding the Stug III's performance in the anti-tank role, Hitler displayed great enthusiasm for the new Jagdpanzer IV. He emphasized the need for its immediate mass production and advocated for its complete replacement of the Panzer IV tanks. Despite efforts of Guderian and Albert Speer to persuade Hitler otherwise, they had little success. Only Wehrmacht was selected for the production of the Jagdpanzer IV. The initial batch of 10 vehicles was delivered by the end of 1943, and production continued until late 1944, resulting in approximately 750 vehicles being built. The Jagdpanzer IV utilized several drive components from the Panzer IV, including the engine, suspension, and transmission. However, notable changes were made to the hull design to enhance the vehicle's protection. One significant modification was the inclusion of a sharply angled lower front glacis, which aimed to increase the vehicle's defensive capabilities by reducing the vulnerability to enemy rounds penetrating it. To replace the Panzer IV turret and upper body, the Jagdpanzer IV featured a new, simplified, significantly angled superstructure. This design served multiple purposes. It increased nominal armor thickness and enhanced the vehicle's ability to deflect enemy shots. Furthermore, the use of single-piece armor plates interlocked with each other contributed to the overall strength and durability of the structure. The Jagdpanzer IV featured a slightly off-center positioning of the gun on the front plate. The gun mount was protected by a large cast mantlet, while movable, conical-shaped armored machine gun port covers were placed on each side of the gun. However, the left machine gun port proved challenging for the gunner and was abandoned from March 1944 onward. This adjustment aimed to enhance the operational efficiency and usability of the Jagdpanzer IV during combat. Located on the upper part of the superstructure, there were two escape hatches. The round-shaped hatch on the right side was specifically for the loader, while positioned to the left of it was the commander's hatch, featuring a small rotating periscope at its center. Additionally, the commander had access to a small supplementary hatch for the retractable telescope. Positioned in front of the loader and commander hatches, there was a sliding armored cover designed to protect the gun sight. The Jagdpanzer IV boasted substantial frontal protection, with armor thickness measuring 50 mm. However, its sides and rear were comparatively weaker, ranging from 20 to 30. It was not until May 1944 that the implementation of 80 mm thick frontal plates became feasible. Although the use of such thick plates was originally intended, production delays were unacceptable, so they were postponed until later production. In the production variant of the Jagdpanzer IV, the 7.5 cm PaK-39 L48 was selected as the main gun, shifted approximately 20 cm to the right to accommodate the sights. The ammunition supply for the main gun consisted of 79 rounds, providing the vehicle with a considerable amount of firepower. In the early stages of production, the Jagdpanzer IV vehicles were fitted with a muzzle brake. However, the crews soon realized that when firing, the muzzle brake caused significant dust clouds to form in front of the vehicle because of its relatively low profile. This obviously impaired their visibility, but also revealed their position to the enemy. Consequently, the crews started removing the muzzle brake to mitigate the issue. To enhance self-defense capabilities, an MG42 machine gun with 1,200 rounds of ammo was included on the Jagdpanzer IV. This additional armament provided the crew with a means of engaging enemy infantry and light targets. The Jagdpanzer IV had a 4-man crew configuration, comprising the commander, gunner, loader or radio operator, and driver. The loader/operator was positioned on the right side of the vehicle while the commander, gunner, and driver were on the left. This project was initiated by the artillery branch with the aim of enhancing their existing Stug 3 vehicles. However, the close collaboration and involvement of the assault gun branch of the Army in the project became evident through a letter written by General der Artillerie Fritz Lindemann to Heinz Guderian in early 1944. Because Sturmgeschütz fired 25% of their ammunition at tanks and 75% at other types of targets, the designation Panzerjäger relates to only part of the Sturmgeschütz's assigned tasks. The designation Sturmgeschütz is a well-known concept to the infantry. Therefore, the General der Infantry is for retaining the Sturmgeschütz designation. Contrary to the original request and intentions, Heinz Guderian took control of the entire project and redirected its purpose. He personally advocated for the Jagdpanzer IV to be reclassified as a Panzerjäger, or tank destroyer, and assigned to reinforce the anti-tank capabilities of Panzer and Panzer Grenadier divisions. As a result, the new Jagdpanzer IV was allocated to units that had limited prior experience with this type of vehicle, while the assault artillery units, which possessed the necessary expertise, were denied a weapon that could have potentially enhanced their effectiveness. Guderian seemingly believed that the tank destroyer's combat prowess outweighed any concerns about inexperienced crews operating it. The Jagdpanzer IV was primarily utilized to equip Panzerjäger Abteilungen, which were anti-tank battalions. Typically, a panzer division would have anti-tank battalions equipped with 21 Jagdpanzer IVs, while Panzer Grenadiers would have battalions of 31. The Jagdpanzer IV made its combat debut during the Allied invasion of Normandy in June 1944. It was deployed in several Panzer and Panzer Grenadier divisions that were stationed in the region. Despite the challenging terrain of northern France, particularly the bocage terrain with its dense hedgerows, the Jagdpanzer IV proved to be effective. One notable engagement occurred on August 9, 1944, when a large armored Allied force advanced towards the Confalais road. The Jagdpanzer IVs, along with the other German armor, engaged the Allied tanks and played a significant role in the defense. Out of the 22 destroyed Allied M4s during the engagement, the Jagdpanzer IVs were credited with destroying most of them. However, there were also instances where the Jagdpanzer IV encountered difficulties against the Allies. In the fighting around Laval and Le Mans, the 17th Panzer Grenadier Division suffered the loss of 9 Jagdpanzer IVs. Despite such setbacks, the overall performance of it during the French campaign of 1944 was commendable. One individual, Oberscharführer Rudolf Roy of the 12th SS Panzer Division, claimed to have destroyed around 36 Allied tanks before he was killed by an enemy sniper in December 1944. The Jagdpanzer IV played a significant role on the Eastern Front, where it saw extensive action. In October 1944, during the intense fighting in Poland, the Germans suffered significant losses, including at least 55 Jagdpanzer IVs. The challenging and brutal nature of the Eastern Front battles took a toll on both men and machine. In Italy, the Jagdpanzer IV also saw limited deployment. 3 panzer divisions were equipped with a combined total of 83. However, as the fighting in Italy progressed, the numbers dwindled. By the end of 1944, only 8 remained, out of which 6 were still operational. The introduction of the Jagdpanzer IV into service addressed the German Army's need for an effective anti-tank vehicle. As the production of the longer L-70 gun was limited and had been initially reserved for the Panther, the Jagdpanzer IV had been equipped with the shorter L-48 gun as a temporary measure. However, by early 1944, L-70 gun production escalated, leading to the successful testing of a new prototype featuring the longer gun. This variant would be adopted and receive various designations, the most prominent being Panzer IV 70V. In the rest of this video, we will refer to the up-armed version as the Panzer IV 70V to distinguish it from the previously mentioned L-48 gun-armed Jagdpanzer IV. The V in the designation represented the manufacturer, Vomac. The number 70 indicated that the gun mounted on the vehicle was the 7.5 cm L-70 gun. The new Panzer IV 70V was presented to Hitler on April 20, 1944, and he was impressed by its capabilities. The Panzer IV 70V retained the overall design of the Jagdpanzer IV, serving as an upgraded version with enhanced armament. While it maintained the same basic structure, certain modifications were required to accommodate the bigger gun. Additionally, several changes were made to streamline production and conserve materials that were scarce at the time. The increased weight resulting from the added gun and armor of the Panzer IV 70 posed challenges for its suspension, leading to higher risk of breakdowns. The rubber rims on the front wheels wore out rapidly due to the added strain. To address this, steel-tired road wheels were introduced as a partial solution. However, despite the efforts, the overall performance of the vehicle was affected. The weight increase from 24 to about 26 tons resulted in a notable decrease in drive performance, with the maximum speed reduced from 40 to 35 km per hour. The Panzer IV 70V underwent significant changes in its armament with the introduction of the stronger 7.5 cm Pak-42 L-70 gun. As this gun was larger and had stronger recoil forces, structural modifications were necessary. The gun mantlet was redesigned to reduce weight, and a hydro-pneumatic equilibrator was installed on the right side of the gun to assist with recoil control. The longer barrel of the gun required the addition of an external travel lock to stabilize the gun during transportation. The 7.5 cm Pak-42 L-70 gun proved to be highly effective, capable of penetrating up to 111 mm of armor at a range of 1 km on standard armor-piercing rounds. Initially, the ammunition load consisted of 55 rounds, but this was later increased to 60 to provide the crew with more ammunition. The initial deployment of the Panzer IV 70V was within the Panzer Brigades, which were intended to consist of 3 Panther companies and 1 Panzer IV 70V company. Initially, 10 such brigades were planned to be formed between August and September of 1944. However, the concept of Panzer Brigades was short-lived, and by November 1944, most of these units were integrated into existing Panzer divisions. As the fronts rapidly collapsed in early 1945, the Panzer IV 70V was allocated to frontline units with minimal training due to the urgency of the situation. The number of vehicles allocated to each unit depended on the available inventory. For instance, the 563rd Heavy Anti-Tank Battalion received 31 vehicles in January 1945, while others, like the 510th Anti-Tank, received only 10 in February 1945. Interestingly, towards the end of the war, some assault gun brigades finally received a number of Panzer IV 70Vs, further expanding their deployment across various units. During the final stages of the war, the Panzer IV 70V started to reach frontline units in notable quantities, particularly towards the end of 1944 and the beginning of 45. The initial concentration of these vehicles occurred in the German Ardennes offensive in late 1944. Approximately 210 of these vehicles were available for deployment during the operation. An additional 90 vehicles were intended to serve as reinforcements and replacements. However, as the war progressed and resources became increasingly scarce, the number of operational Panzer IV 70Vs declined. By mid-March 1945, only 77 were left on the front lines, and out of those, only 33 still worked. The Panzer IV 70V played a significant role on the Eastern Front, engaging in heavy combat with Soviet forces. One notable example occurred on the 16th of March 1945, near the Oder River in North Poland, where vehicles from the 9th Panzer Regiment were able to destroy more than 10 Soviet tanks. Another noteworthy unit, the 563rd Heavy Anti-Tank Battalion, engaged in extensive combat against the advancing Soviet forces in early 1945. Over a span of 10 days, they reported the destruction of 58 enemy tanks. while suffering the loss of only one Jagdpanther and 4 Panzer IV 70s. However, it should be noted that the number of Panzer IV 70Vs on the Eastern Front was limited, and as the war progressed, their presence diminished even further. By April 1945, only 3 were left on the front. After the Second World War, the Jagdpanzer IV did see limited combat action in post-war conflicts. In 1950, several vehicles were provided to Syria, reportedly by the French, although some sources suggest Soviet involvement in the supply. These Jagdpanzer IVs were later used by Syrian forces during the Six-Day War in 1967, where they saw action against the Israelis. Additionally, both Bulgaria and Romania operated small numbers of Jagdpanzer IVs for a short period after the war. That concludes our exploration of the German Jagdpanzer IV and Panzer IV 70V. What are your thoughts on these vehicles? Do you agree with Guderian's decision to allocate them to the Panzer Force? Share your opinions in the comments section. If you haven't done so already, we invite you to subscribe and stay updated on future content. If you'd like to contribute further, consider Patreon or PayPal. Your contributions help us create more engaging videos. Until next time, stay focused and stay tuned.